The three ancient weapons in One Piece, ladies and gentlemen. Pluton, a gargantuan battleship capable of obliterating an island in one shot. Poseidon, a mermaid of legend that has the ability to control sea monsters the size of mountains to her whim. And Uranus. God, I'm like the freaking 8-year-old. Okay. Let's try that again. Uranus. It still sounds like urine. Okay. Two things. Number one, go watch this video, and number two, I'm just gonna call it Uranus, because number one, that sounds cooler, and it has to deal with the god of the sky. All right, okay. And Uranus, a weapon of mystery that we still don't know anything about, but is probably just as terrifying as the other two. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about these three ancient weapons, some of the stuff that's already been revealed in the story, very little of it, in fact, but mostly theorizing about the bigger questions and the bigger scope of things. What's the history of these weapons? How are they going to be used in the One Piece story? Stuff like that. In fact, I call them weapons, but in fact, one of them is not really a weapon so much as it is a title. It's not something physically that you can just pick up and start using, so that brings other questions into that actual character that holds that title, what's going to happen later on. But let's just, look at the things that they have in common all across the board that we already know about. Okay, so these three ancient weapons all have names after gods, two of which from Roman mythology and one of which from Greek mythology. We have Pluton, named after Pluto, and then we have Uranus, named after the god of the sky from Roman mythology. Finally, we have Poseidon, who is the god of the seas and earthquakes and the weather from Greek mythology. So you might be wondering why two of them are Roman and one of them is Greek. Really, I think that just comes down to the fact that Oda already named a character Neptune, which would be the Roman equivalent of Poseidon. Neptune is actually Shirahoshi's father, and Shirahoshi is the one that actually bears the title of Poseidon. So like I said, it's not actually a weapon in this case, it's just a title being held by a particular mermaid, Shirahoshi just being the latest in a long line of mermaids that have held this title. But we're going to start with Pluton, because that was the one that was actually first referenced in the story by Crocodile during the Alabasta arc. That was Crocodile's big goal throughout, taking over Alabasta and the foundation of Baroque works and his Operation Utopia plan. It essentially all hinged on him finding the location of Pluton. Pluton has been stated numerous times to be just a giant fuck-off battleship. We have no idea what it even looks like, but I can imagine this thing is, considering we already have seen some pretty impressive battleships being used by other pirates and the Navy before in One Piece, this thing is one for the money. I'm picturing a giant Herculean-sized battleship that's the size of a mountain that has, all these crazy guns and maybe a laser rifle or something on the top of it. I don't know. It was crazy, right? Well, anyway, Crocodile was looking for this thing, and apparently its whereabouts were found in the tombs of the royal family in Alabarna on a poneglyph, so that's why he needed Nico Robin to read the poneglyphs. Now, when after the very climax of his plan was occurring and they were doing their takeover of Alubarna, it was Cobra, the king of Alabasta, that actually he got him to tell him the location of the poneglyph. Crocodile and Nico Robin went down there. Crocodile can't read it, that's why he had Robin there. Robin read it, and she did reveal later on that actually the location of Pluton was on this poneglyph. She just never told Crocodile about it because, he's kind of a bastard. So she lied to him and just said, "Oh no, there's nothing about Pluton on here. It's just history of the country or something." So that avoided Crocodile getting his hands on it. However, Robin does currently know the location and probably maybe even how to activate or utilize Pluton itself. So next time it was mentioned was during the Enies Lobby arc. So the whole deal with CP9 trying to, kidnap Robin and take her to her side, as well as trying to infiltrate Water 7 and, Iceberg's mansion and trying to kill him and everything, they were after the blueprints to Pluton. Pluton was apparently constructed a long-ass time ago in Water 7 itself. We would assume during the Void Century, all of the three ancient weapons probably have something to do with the Void Century. At least we know that the two, Pluton and Poseidon, certainly do. So Uranus probably does as well. So Pluton was probably constructed in Water 7 during the Void Century. Hell, it could even be the construction of Pluton which got Water 7 its notoriety as being the city of, shipwrights. How all these great shipwrights come from Water 7. It might have actually been the creation of Pluton that got the world to, oh, wow, yeah, this is the island where it all started. They were able to build this amazing battleship, so that's where you have to go to, your shipwrighting needs. So that was the case. However, the original shipwrights way back when that built Pluton were a little bit worried that this massive weapon that could destroy an island with one shot might fall into the wrong hands. So they kept the blueprints on standby, passing them down through the generations of shipwrights in case that ultimate weapon did get in the hands of an evil fuck that just started like, boom, there you go, country, boom, see ya, kingdom, boom, oh, this is fun. They can make a similar warship in order to defeat that warship, which, number one, is a pretty smart move, but also lets you know that this weapon is so great and so powerful, the only thing that could even potentially rival it in strength is another warship of equal caliber that was made from the same blueprints. So this is not the thing that you can just like let's just hit it a bunch of times and it'll stop. This is something really freaking dangerous here. So they passed down these blueprints throughout the ages. Eventually they landed in Tom's lap, who was Frankie's shipwright master, Frankie and Iceberg's shipwright master on Water 7. And after Tom was found guilty and was being shipped off to Ennie's lobby, I guess before that happened, he passed these blueprints down to Iceberg. Iceberg was aware that CP9 was trying to get their hands on them so they could do the exact opposite. Instead of creating a warship to fight the original, they just wanted the blueprints so they could build their own warship, and then the world government could even become even powerful than they already are. However, Iceberg was aware of this, and he decided to hand them off to Frankie, who at this point was thought to be dead. So he's like, okay, you're good as dead anyway. Stop using the name Cuddy Flan, which is your original name. Go by the name of Frankie. Take these blueprints. Guard them with your life. Eventually, this didn't end up working too well because CP9's really good at their job. So they ended up almost killing Iceberg and then capturing Frankie, although they couldn't find the blueprints on him. Of course, because Frankie's a cyborg, he had his blueprints, hidden somewhere in like a hidden compartment into his body. And then during the big standoff at Ennie's lobby at the Tower of Law, when the Straw Hats were all, standing there trying to get Robin back, and Robin had her big moment where she was like, I want to live, please help me. Frankie is tearfully moved by this, and he realizes that, the whole reason we kept these blueprints was in case the ancient weapon got in the hands of stupid fucks like you, we could build a weapon to stop you. But this is not what they're intended to. You're trying to use the blueprints for that end, so I'm just gonna burn them and then place a bet. If you manage to get away with Robin, you're gonna find the location of the original Pluton, and then, we're screwed basically because we have no way to fight back. But if I destroy these blueprints and you manage to, rescue Robin, the Straw Hats do, then you'll be left with absolutely nothing. And as luck would have it, that's what happened. Frankie burned the original blueprints to Pluton. Despite actually seeing the blueprints, we didn't actually get to see any of the pages of them or anything. We didn't really know how it is, constructed or anything like that. Although, I'm not a carpenter or a shipwright or anything, but that seemed like a pretty small booklet for a world-ending super battleship weapon, but that's just me, whatever. According to Kaku and Lucci's reaction to it, it really was legit. That was the actual blueprints to the thing. But yeah, so the only way to access Pluton now is through Robin, or having someone else that could read that poneglyph in Alabasta, which is very unlikely. So Robin's the only one that knows the location of Pluton itself. So it's hidden somewhere in the world, just this massive battleship just capable of obliterating an entire island. Considering most of the kingdoms and countries in One Piece take place on islands, because it's a mostly island-centric world, it's mostly water. This would be a devastating weapon to have. I don't exactly know how that would work, how you would have to have a crew to pilot it, or if it's like Eneru's Arc Maxim, it's kind of like self-sustaining, you don't need a whole crew of people, or where something this massive could even be hidden. But that's the case. I actually read a few people thinking that Oro Jackson was Pluton, Roger's ship, to which I have to debunk very easily by stating that the poneglyphs that were written that contain the location of the original Pluton are hundreds of years old, even older than freaking, Roger, and 800 and 900 years old. Back in the Void Century, this thing was probably constructed. It wasn't explicitly stated, I don't think, it was constructed in the Void Century, but certainly long ago, before the time of Roger and his merry men were around. So, and just because Tom had the blueprints doesn't mean, this is supposed to be a last-ditch effort. We're gonna build this battleship only if the other battleships awaken. Tom wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, Pirate King, you want a ship? Well, I do have these blueprints lying around that'll make you a battleship capable of leveling any island you choose. Let's use those! No, it just doesn't make any sense. Oro Jackson was a very impressive ship, just like the Thousand Sunny, but it's not Pluton. All right, so the next ancient weapon that we learn about was actually first mentioned in Skypiea. This was Poseidon. So there's also a poneglyph on Skypiea, and after the whole deal with Eneru and everything, Robin reads this poneglyph, and she just kind of mentions that it mentions Poseidon, a weapon named after a god, and it tells me where it's at. We get no more information on that for several hundred chapters until finally we get to the Fishman Island arc, the very end of it, where Robin discovers another poneglyph mentioning this guy named Joy Boy, whoever that could be, I don't freaking know, and his promise to this mermaid princess of old. And the mermaid princess of old that also was during the Void, this was all during the Void Century as well, about 800-900 years ago, the princess was named Poseidon. So, Robin connects the dots here. She's like, okay, there's this poneglyph on Skypiea that states the location of Poseidon is on Fishman Island, and that's the name of it. And then she's reading this poneglyph on Fishman Island, and it's talking about Poseidon as an actual mermaid rather than a physical weapon. So she's like, I wonder what's going on here. So she discusses this with Neptune, the king of the Ryuga kingdom, the father of Shirahoshi. And Neptune lays it down on her that Poseidon is more of a title than an actual weapon. It's the title given to the mermaid princess that has the ability, the unique ability, to control and speak with Sea Kings. Now, Sea Kings are these giant sea monsters that are very prevalent in the One Piece story, but they're very different from other kinds of marine life. You see, regular mermaids and even some fishmen like Jinbei can communicate with fish in some ways. However, Sea Kings are these monstrous things that even mermaids can't communicate with. They're just these mindless beasts. Most people viewed them that way. Even mermaids and fishmen viewed them that way. However, we find out near the end of the arc that Shirahoshi's cries are able to reach them. They're actually not these dumb beasts. They're highly intelligent, even probably more intelligent than humans. And they were able to come to her call, and this all has something to do with the arc of Noah that also ties back into the promise that Joy Boy made back during the Void Century and everything like that. Luffy was able to hear their voices as well, the same way that Roger was, but that's not because they're tied in with the ancient weapons or anything. That's just a unique ability that Roger and Luffy both have, the ability to hear the voices of all things. Made a separate video about that if you want to go check that out in the card above there. They have really nothing to do with the actual legend itself of the ancient weapons. So, it doesn't even belong to every mermaid princess. It skips a lot of generations, and Neptune was wary about his daughter attaining this power, but yeah, she does have it now. The thing is, she's unaware of her power, and that's what makes it so dangerous. Shirahoshi is kind of this really big crybaby, and having the ability to pretty much end the world if she gets really upset, that's a little bit daunting, so no one really wants to tell her about it, and it's also the reason why her brothers are like really always careful to keep her happy and cheerful, because if she starts crying and all the Sea Kings show up, they could level the entire world very easily, because they're an entire army of these giant sea monsters the size of freaking skyscrapers, okay? With high intelligence. And Shirahoshi's the only one that can control them. So certainly it's going to be something very, very relevant for her to understand this power she has, understand how to control this power in order to possibly help out Luffy at some point in the future, because that's what she does want to do. She's heading to Reverie along with Neptune in this upcoming arc, so I don't think they're going to let everyone know, like, hey, by the way, I don't want to brag or anything, but our country does have a world-destroying super weapon at its hand, and all the people at Reverie are like, what is that? And they just wheel out Shirahoshi. He's like, oh, okay. Also, I find it interesting that the poneglyph to give the direction to Fishman Island is on Skypiea, which is like the exact opposite. Skypiea is 10,000 meters up and in the clouds in the White Sea, and Fishman Island is 10,000 meters down. So that makes a lot of sense if someone put it up there to make sure no one would ever find it, to keep the key as far away from the lock as possible, So that was the case there. But yeah, it also ties back into Joy Boy and the original Poseidon that lived during the Void Century. There was a promise that Joy Boy wanted to make to the mermaid princess, but he could just never get that promise. Hey, perhaps maybe, did you ever think of this? Maybe Joy Boy has something to do with that like Roger and then eventually Luffy's lineage, because he's kind of not involved here. It's more of just like somebody that the mermaid princess met. and, played a very vital role there. So I think Joy Boy is going to be, like, the predecessor of Luffy and Roger's ability to hear the voices of all things. Maybe it's something that he did to Poseidon or with Poseidon that allowed him to get this ability that was passed down through his genetics that eventually led, well, maybe not genetics in the sense of, like, Luffy and Roger are biologically related, but more like spiritually or something like that. And that the inheritors of Joy Boy's will receive this power. And then Roger had it, and then eventually Luffy had it as well. That makes a little bit more sense spiritually rather than actually genetically. The last major weapon that we're aware of, and we don't know what it is exactly, we just know its name. Robin mentioned it during the time when they were on in Fishman Island, when Robin was speaking to Neptune about the secret weapon, Poseidon, and I'm sorry, boobs, sorry. She mentioned the third weapon's name was Uranus, also named after a Roman deity. Now, Uranus in Roman mythology was the god of the sky, also the consort of Gaia. Yeah, it's in typical mythology fashion, you have elements fucking each other. In this case, it was the sky coming down to the earth to Gaia. I'm like, hey, baby, I see you down here. You're the earth. I'm the sky. I think we're just going to get together. And then they fuck and they make the original Titans. Yeah, it's just how it goes. It's just how it goes, right? Anyway, so there's a lot of theories surrounding Uranus and what it could possibly be. I hear a lot of people throwing out Momonosuke as a possibility for his ability to control Zunisha, who is the giant elephant that makes up the country of Zou, where all the minks live. You see, Shirahoshi had the ability to speak to the Sea Kings, which made her the ancient weapon Poseidon. Well, here we have Momonosuke, who also has the unique ability to speak to this giant elephant that no one else was able to communicate with, and manipulated it at his will. If Momonosuke is like, fight the Jack's crew, the Zou listened to him and attacked it. I do not, and he's the only one that has this ability. It's also an ability that gets carried down apparently through genetics in this case, because apparently Momonosuke's, I think, predecessor had this ability as well. But I don't think he's the third ancient weapon, because yeah, Zou is, Zunisha is a formidable force. It's a giant elephant, but I don't think it's a world-destroying super weapon on the same way as the giant battleship that can nuke an island from a distance, nuke multiple islands from a distance, and an entire legion of sea monsters is. It just doesn't quite fit. Zunisha's story is a little bit different. Apparently it broke some sort of law a long time ago. It broke something, and then it was forced to walk for all eternity. So it seems more like an animal that's having a punishment rather than a world-destroying super weapon. And even though its power is quite formidable, it's also gotten on in age, whereas the Sea Kings are creatures that might a little bit be, they might be ageless, or the fact that there's just so many of them, that's what makes them dangerous. Zunisha is just one animal, a giant elephant that can't be, fucked with on a one-on-one combat, but still just one single doddering old elephant that even Jack was able to wound rather well. If Jack would have kept hammering Zunisha without Momonosuke getting involved and giving it orders, he might have actually managed to defeat and topple the elephant. In fact, Zunisha's words to Momonosuke made that very clear. If you do not give me an order right now, then you're all going to be in danger. And also, Zunisha's pretty slow. So as a world-destroying super weapon, like, go to that island and destroy it! Yeah, Zunisha could probably do that, but it would take a long-ass time to get there, and it wouldn't just be the same as just, firing a shot from Pluton and then boom! It would probably take a little while. So I think Momonosuke and the Kozuki clan and Zunisha's story, I think it might be connected in some way, a very similar way of how only Shirahoshi can speak to Sea Kings, only Momonosuke or this heir of the Kozuki clan can speak to Zunisha. It might be connected in some way, but I don't think it's the same exact thing. I don't think it's the third ancient weapon. It's particularly because Uranus, the god of the sky. Alright, well let's look to the sky, because the sky is very prevalent in One Piece. What could that possibly entail? Oh, I wonder, maybe it's the fucking moon? Yeah, okay. So we have Eneru's Great Space Operation when Eneru arrives on the moon. And I made a whole video about that too because this thing is really screwy. But basically, he arrives on the moon and he discovers this giant city there with all these hieroglyphics around. And he's looking at these hieroglyphics. So one of these hieroglyphics is just a story about how the people on the moon ran out of resources on the moon, so they traveled to the Earth. The next hieroglyphic's a little bit interesting. It depicts a bunch of these moon people, one of which seems to be a group on top of a ship. Okay, that's interesting. And then you see a bunch of sea monsters down here on the bottom right. Okay, that's a little bit odd. And on the left, we see a bunch of them standing on some platform holding balloons. Okay, that probably doesn't connect back to anything. But then at the top here, we get this symbol of the sun. I think that Uranus, the ancient weapon, is still an ancient weapon, very similar to Pluton, like it's actual an object. And this object is going to be found on the moon. The dangerous side here now is that Eneru is probably in possession of said weapon. But hey, you know what? I'm fine with that because that gives Eneru a way to get back into the story. You know, Eneru was defeated by Luffy, but if he has a freaking ultimate super weapon at his display, I mean, come on now. This could bring him back into the story as an actual serious antagonist. People are talking about, oh, maybe Doflamingo's gonna come back. Fuck Doflamingo. We already had a 100-chapter arc about Doflamingo. I want to see Eneru come back. I think there's still some things we haven't seen from him that we can display, and I thought he was a rather interesting villain. I mean, yeah, he had the god complex, and he was kind of an arrogant son of a bitch, but I liked his devil fruit ability, and his design was pretty awesome as well. So if either the Straw Hats end up going to the moon, or if he just decides, hey, I have this giant super weapon, an entire legion of followers, and this ultimate power, and I was only defeated by a guy that just happened to have my natural devil fruit weakness, all I'm saying is after Eneru figures out that the moon is kind of boring and there's nothing on it, and there's probably not a lot of stuff to eat either, you know, he's gonna be like, okay, I'm going to use this super weapon and try to take over the world now. I think that's the case, though. I think these hieroglyphics kind of maybe hint at it a little bit, of course, with the sea monsters on the bottom right being indicative of Poseidon, and then you see the battleship here being indicative of Pluton. I really don't know what these people on the left are, so that kind of punches a hole in it, but I think then maybe it has something to do with the sun over it, this beacon, this object that you can be using, because a big issue on the moon is electricity. The people that originally settled the moon used electrical power in order to charge up their city. Whenever Eneru arrived, the batteries were drained and the city was dead. But of course, Eneru, having the Goro Goro no Mi power, was able to charge it back up again. But how did the original people, how did they power up their city, provided they didn't already have the Goro Goro no Mi? Someone in their ranks didn't have it. They might have actually used Uranus, the sacred weapon, in order to power it up. Fuck! Uranus might just have the ability to channel the power of the sun. That might be it. That might be its dangerous ability. And I think that would put it on equal level. Because, yeah, if you have an army of sea monsters at your display that are found all throughout the world and you can unify together and set them for a task, that's a pretty dangerous world-ending weapon. An ultimate battleship that dwarfs any other sort of constructed ship in the history of mankind that can just nuke an island from a distance, nuke multiple islands from a distance, that's world-destroying in this world that is mainly comprised of islands. And then finally, some ancient warship on the moon that can channel the powers of the sun and shoot massive bolts of electricity everywhere. That's also probably a big deal as well. Now, how are they actually going to play a role in the story? Well, I think it's going to be rather more than endgame than anything else, because you really can't go back from that. The world government is certainly trying to get their hands on the world-ending weapons, because if they can get their hands on any of them, Pluton, Poseidon, or Uranus, that's going to be dangerous, which Reverie coming up and Shirahoshi going, and the world government's running that party in Marijois, I don't know, because if they find out that Shirahoshi is Poseidon and they manage to kidnap her, that would be pretty fucking dangerous. But it also might be one of the ancient weapons that ends the rule of the world government once and for all. It might have been constructed by the D-Clan or the people back in the Void Century that after they realized they were losing and that the world government was taking over, they needed some way in order to fight back against the world government. We need to figure out a way to take them out someday, to defeat all these celestial dragons and free the world government's grip from the world, and that's where the ancient weapons come into play. We don't know which of these ancient weapons, or maybe all of them are going to come into play at some point, but we know some things. For instance, instance, Robin and Frankie both have ties to Pluton, so if the Straw Hats ever stumble upon Pluton, they might be able to not only utilize it and use it for their own ends, but also might be able to destroy it, since Frankie and Robin are both on the Straw Hat crew. Uranus has ties to Eneru, as I stated, and Poseidon is Shirahoshi, who is already very closely tied with the Straw Hat Pirates. So the Straw Hats certainly have a lot of things in their favor, provided that, Shirahoshi doesn't get kidnapped or something like that, or Pluton doesn't get discovered by somebody else. The real danger here is Uranus, because it's so unknown. We don't know anything about it, and it being on the moon and having the ability of the sun and electricity, that's just my conjecture. It could be something completely different. But yeah, it's something that only gets brought up occasionally throughout the One Piece story. It's not something that gets brought up very often. Those are basically the same exact statement I just repeated twice to extend this video out longer to make myself sound smarter, because you know how I am. But yeah, they're not things... But yeah, at any rate, they don't get brought up that much in the story, so don't hold your breath to find out what Uranus is going to be later on, or where the location of Pluton really is. Although, if we ever start getting close to the island where Pluton is, Robin knows its location. She's not going to just bring that up to anybody. She's probably best to keep that under wraps. The less people that know about that, the better. But if they're like, we're going to Hingy Dingy Island, and Robin's like, Hingy Dingy Island? Oh shit, that's apparently where Pluton is. Like, oh shit. Something like that. Or perhaps it's part of the One Piece also. Maybe Roger found one of these ancient weapons during his journeys, and they're actually part of the One Piece there. I don't think it's the Oro Jackson, but it might be one of the weapons that one of the other pieces of treasure that he found, and he just hid it on Rafto with the other pieces of the One Piece in that one place. That's another way to look at it too. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think about the ancient weapons, what you think they are, I guess what you think Uranus and Pluton are. We already know what Poseidon is, what their relevance to the story could be, and how are they actually going to be utilized in the story. Are the Straw Hats going to get their hands on one, and then the world government gets their hands on another, and like some third party has their hands on a three, and it's like some three-way deadlock shit? That might be crazy. But I can't wait to see it, because this is actually setting up something for like a huge-ass war with these ancient weapons that's going to involve a lot of badass explosions and Michael Bay kind of shit. So I'm actually looking forward to that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yeah, Tekking101 signing out. Later, guys.